Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast. I'm Janey Lee Grace. This is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. I'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there'll be inspiration from experts, quit-lit authors, and sober heroes. Hi and welcome to the podcast. It's Janey Lee Grace in the middle of an unbelievably busy August. It's mad. So many people have, a lot of downtime in August, but it's not the way for me. This is just about my busiest time ever, I think. So some of you will have seen, if you follow me on Instagram, I hope you do, at Janey Lee Grace, that in addition to planning the Sober Club, which I'll tell you a bit more about later, I'm also in the middle of my awards. I host these awards every year for natural and organic and eco products, and it's a really busy time because we're getting products off to judges and in our kind of final stages, so it's all very exciting. And the really great news is that we have this fabulous pop-up shop. So if you are able to get to London, this is an opportunity to have a look at and to sample natural organic brands that you often don't get a chance to try, because a lot of these things are just online. They're little artisan brands or they're only available via their websites. So this is a great opportunity. So I know there's lots of listeners who aren't in London, and I apologise, but for those of you who can get there, it's the 9th to the 15th of September, and it's at Hello Love. We're doing our awards in association with the charity Hello Love, which is in Bloomsbury, in central London, and our pop-up shop runs from the 9th to the 15th of September. So you'll find the details on Instagram and over at my website. If you just go to janeyleegrace.com, you'll find all the info there, and it'd be lovely if you could pop along. It's closed on the Wednesday morning, the 11th of September, because that's our private awards announcement. But other than that, it's open. It's a fabulous venue. It's run by the Hello Beautiful Cancer Foundation, and there's all sorts of lovely stuff goes on there. There's a little vegan cafe, and they have yoga and all kinds of stuff. It's a great place. So hopefully I'm going to be doing more stuff there in the future. I'm definitely going to be doing an event around sobriety in October, when they do their kind of natural cancer awareness month. So watch out for that. So 9th to the 15th of September, that's the pop-up shop. Of course, talking events, the week, a few days before that, Saturday the 7th of September, is the event at the Jago that's hosted by Sober Dave. Now, I must give you a big announcement that he's changed his handle on Instagram. So it's now Sober Dave 1, at Sober Dave 1. So make sure you check in with Dave's posts. It's the Saturday afternoon social with Sober Dave on Saturday, 7th of September at the Jago. It's in association with My Yard, the charity that I've been working with, and I'm going to be there as well. I'm going to pop up and speak and formally kind of launch the Sober Club. So it's going to be a fun afternoon. We've got live music. My mate Phil, who is the best piano player, I mean literally ever. So we're in for an absolute treat. And of course, it's sponsored by Rock Sober with their new alcohol-free beer. There's going to be a light lunch, and tickets are tenner, and it's on Eventbrite. Dave's handling it all. It's not my thing, but I'm kind of popping up. So I really hope you'll support him. It's so cool watching his journey, just sharing his story. And it's just amazing how one person sharing their story really gives so much inspiration to other people, because it's that thing of, well, wow, if Dave can do it, I reckon I can do it too. And that really does just kind of create that ripple effect. So if you can make it, please go to Eventbrite, type in self-care for the sober curious, and that event will come up, or you'll find it in the show notes for this podcast. So back on the Sober Club then, it's starting to come together. Isn't it amazing when things are meant to be, they kind of flow. And although I'm, a bit exhausted and there's a huge amount to do, it feels like there's the right energy around it. Anyone who's kind of put a project together will know what I mean by that. Some things I get involved in, I feel so stuck along the way that I just don't complete them. I do the thing that I'm constantly telling other people not to do. I kind of procrastinate and then end up not seeing it through. But with this, it really feels like there's an energy there. And so it's really exciting. And we're we're jacking up great content, great experts. So of course, when it opens on the 7th, it isn't all singing, all dancing, because, you know, it's brand new, but there will be some stuff already in there, and it will evolve, obviously, as time goes on. And as you know, we're going to open it up at a very cheap rate, a discounted rate for anyone who joins at the beginning. We're going to have a limited number of people joining the club at the beginning, and then we're going to close the doors and you know, do what we do and get it right, and then it'll open up again. But if you come in at the beginning as a founder member, then you get to stay at that price for as long as you want to be in the sober club. So I really hope it will be of benefit to some people. It's been a great week because I've found a couple of amazing experts who are going to work with me in the club, and one is a relationships expert, and I've been wanting to find someone who can handle the whole topic of relationships in a really holistic kind of way, and I've found the perfect person. She's just wonderful. So obviously I'll bring her to you as a podcast guest as well. We'll interview her on the podcast, and then within the Sober Club she's going to be doing regular stuff, so you can get your own personal questions answered there, because she really knows her stuff around creating great boundaries and how to deal with tricky relationships once, you know, perhaps you've decided to ditch the booze, but maybe your partner hasn't, or your family don't understand where you're at, or your friends, whatever. So we're going to look at all of that, as well as, of course, the ever tricky topic of dating and sober sex and all of this stuff. So over the weeks, we'll be looking into all of that with my wonderful relationships and sex expert that I've come across. So and again, isn't it amazing how these people kind of just come into your life when you need them? It's great. So anyways, last week I mentioned to you that I'd seen a piece in the press about where the angle of the piece was reducing your drinking. The angle of the piece was that the government's units in the UK, recommended units, are 14 units per week. And they did this study as to what happened when, I think it was just women in this particular study, but they looked at what happened when women did drink to within their limits. Some of the people within the study ended up staying sober. Some carried on drinking, but they kept to within their units. We know, don't we, that there is a big trend in mindful drinking as well as sobriety. You know, we know that some people are able to moderate their drinking. I've documented it and said it many times, that is not for me. That does not work for me. I genuinely believe I don't have an off switch. And I've tried moderating many, many times. So, and I've just ended up, you know, going back to day one over and over again. So that's it for me. I personally, I'm not interested in moderation. It doesn't work for me. But I absolutely respect that we're not all the same. You know, I can moderate when it comes to a cup of coffee. You know, I don't need to have 5 of those in a row. And I know it's not the same for everybody. And I really want to respect that. There's lots of people listening to this podcast who may be at a stage where they, you know, they're sober curious and they're just thinking around all of this, and that's great. We welcome you, whatever stage you're at, without any judgment. I don't care what stage you're at. I don't care how you got sober, how you came to it. It doesn't matter. But I love to have these discussions and bring you, you know, inspiration across all the different kind of angles, if you like. So I'm aware that there are people who are sober curious. They are thinking they would like to moderate, or they're already successfully drinking mindfully, if you like. There are other people who really are drinking way too much. They're possibly dependent drinkers, and it would be a really bad idea for them to stop straight away. We know that's really, really dangerous. So they absolutely need to reduce their drinking. So I thought it'd be really helpful to interview Georgia Foster, who I've known for a while. She's a leading hypnotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, and she wrote the book Drink Less in 7 Days. And she's as I say, she's a hypnotherapist, so she works with clients and she has various programs. She's based in Australia now. And Georgia's take on all of this is that she does drink. So if you sort of tune in halfway through this podcast, you've not been listening to me saying this bit, and then you listen to the podcast, and there I am interviewing someone who right away off the cut, off the first bit of the interview says, yeah, I drink. Sometimes have hangovers. Don't be surprised, because that's Georgia's background. It's her take on it. But we do get into some really useful stuff about mindset, whether you want to moderate or not. There's some very useful stuff in this interview about how the subconscious mind works. So I really hope you won't switch off. If you're someone who, like me, knows that you don't want to moderate, just a heads up that there's still a lot of useful stuff in this conversation around mindset and around how the brain works, and how we can sort of retrain our subconscious mind, because of course we know that the subconscious mind wants to carry on doing what it's always done, and now we're into behavior change. Most of us, that's why we're in the situation we're in. We want to do things a bit differently, and Georgia gives us some great content around that. So enjoy the interview. Georgia Foster, hypnotherapist and amazing all-round woman, author, presenter. Well, Georgia, you tell us about your work. We've known each other for a couple of years. I love the stuff that you do. You are prolific, and you change people's lives, and you do amazing stuff. So tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk about some of the work that you're doing now.
Sure. Well, I am Australian and I live in Melbourne now, but I lived in London for 22 years. So, and I've only been back in Melbourne just over a couple of years. So I feel kind of half British and half Aussie. But, I think just a bit of background about where I was and where I'm now is that I had the privilege of studying in the States this amazing psychology, which is about, the inner parts within us that can sabotage our lives. And then I went on to London and I trained to be a clinical hypnotherapist. And that's kind of where the psychology and my hypnotherapy kind of came together, and I built up a clinic base. And I worked with a number of corporates, and a lot of them were coming to see me about stress and anxiety, issues with insomnia. And they were saying to me, Georgia, can you kind of focus on my drinking a little bit? And it just kind of happened organically that people were saying, Georgia, my friends really cut back on their drinking. They told me about you. So I started to build this organic kind of reach, because it's obviously, I specialize in alcohol reduction now. But in those days, it was just kind of like, oh, God, I'm told everybody has to quit, which I understand is where a lot of people go to. And from there, I wrote a book called The Drinkless Mind, and I had to self-publish because nobody would publish it for me. But I had the privilege of then being like within 4 months was in the first Psychologist magazine, in the Sunday Times, in the Guardian, and I started to realize that there was a need for this kind of middle ground of drinking. So I started just become more and more known for that. And it's really where most of my business lies now, is in the alcohol world.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? You were maybe just a little bit ahead of your time in some of this stuff, because, of course, in the last couple of years, the whole mindful drinking movement, as it's now known, has become very big in the UK. I don't know how much you're aware of that. You haven't been here quite. So. You are, cool. So you know that there are mindful drinking festivals, and there's now a really big trend in the UK for mindful drinking. But just before we get into your sort of processes, just tell us a bit about your own story, because there'll be a lot of people listening thinking, oh, wow, she's an Aussie, so she probably knew how to knock it back. Tell us about the drinking culture in Australia. I'm actually really, genuinely interested to know what that's like now, and also your sort of part in all of that in your day.
Yeah, I mean, well, I still drink and I still have the odd hangover. I mean, I am a drinker. But I think one of the reasons why I wanted to, I've become so passionate about it, is that it's a very private subject. And my personal journey was in my 20s. I had very low self-esteem, high levels of social anxiety, I mean, I laugh about it now, but my best friend, who is still my best friend and was then, she was a very famous model in Australia, and she had all the rock stars after her. And I was kind of like, always felt like because I was always carrying weight, and I always felt very self-conscious. And I think most of the time, I mean, I was very sociable. I was very kind of a very popular person, but it was always around booze. And I had real anxiety about socializing with people with that alcohol in my bloodstream, which now I understand why, but at the time I didn't. So, and I think the Australians, you see, I think the Brits and the Aussies have the same thing, and we've got that kind of same sense of humor. We're also very, I mean, one of my American clients said to me once, and I still say this to this day. She said to me, Georgia, in Britain, you have a pub on every corner, but in America, we have a pharmacy on every corner. And I thought it was such an interesting thing to say, because we know that Americans are highly medicated. As a society, it's quite concerning how many people are medicated with anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication. But alcohol can be that bit too. I mean, I'm very conscious of the fact that, drinkers like myself, having low self-esteem, it's the vicious cycle. You drink too much, you wake up and you feel bad about yourself. You don't remember what you said or did. And then it just becomes can become a bit of a vicious cycle. So I understand the anxiety. I get it. And I'm very much a believer. For me, it works to decide, that, not drinking for me doesn't work for me, because I like to drink. But now for me is emotionally, I don't use it as my crutch. For example, if I'm anxious, that's when I decide not to drink. If I'm feeling fearful about life, I decide, well, if I want to have a drink, but I'm not drinking to run away from my life. I'm very crystal clear in my mind. I have methods to say, I'm not feeling great about myself. What's going on, Georgia? Rather than chuck it into the wine.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really the key, isn't it? That when alcohol becomes the crutch, the thing that you fall back on, it's that thing that we've all been through of, having a stressful day, I need a drink, or, I've just had some bad news, I need a drink. And I'm guessing, that's really interesting that you say that that's when you choose not to drink, when you have anxiety, because surely that's when it's the start of the slippery slope, as it were. If you're using alcohol every time something, in inverted commas, bad happens, isn't it? I'm not even sure what my question is, but I think it's just so interesting, isn't it, that alcohol has become the cure all. We think of it as the thing that relaxes us, the thing that makes us more confident, the thing that solves all the problems. Of course, it does none of those things at all. But we've all built it up so that it does.
Well, I think the thing is, it's funny. I was being interviewed by someone in the States the other day who has a sober program. And I said to her, I think we've got to really understand that the reason why people drink is to run away of negative self-talk. I mean, that's the bit that I work with. It's just, if we didn't give ourselves such a hard time, and if we weren't kind of full of so many regrets, and if we didn't, I call it radio crazy sometimes, people who have insomnia, the reason why they have that busy brain syndrome, they think they've got, you can have the busiest day on the planet. But if you decide to have an alcohol-free day and then you get to bed and your brain's going like this, what I'm saying? That's the negative. That's the inner critic going, it's really getting, well, you've had a busy day. Now I've got the quiet time. I can get at you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize, and, we often talk about, what is it that, when you become familiar with being sober and realizing that liking yourself is really good. And I think the best way to like yourself is when you're sober. And that's really a goal for people. I think that, I think it takes a lot of courage to decide not to drink. But when you're there, I think it's important to actually embrace who you are and enjoy who you are, because, if you're not authentic to yourself when you're sober, then when you drink, it's just going to end up getting into a vicious cycle,
I mean, you're absolutely
Really.
right. It absolutely is. We do ultimately drink to sort of numb those feelings, don't we? And numb that negative self-talk. We all have it to a greater or lesser extent. So how else can we, deal with that negative self-talk then? What else can we do to tame that inner critic from constantly going at us?
Well, one of the things I always say, keep that emotional diary. Write down what the inner critic's saying to you, because what we know is that when your inner critic saying, "Well, you were terrible in that meeting," or "that person at the school gates thinks this about you," or whatever it is that their inner critic saying the same thing about you. I mean, we're all quite narcissistic by nature in interesting ways, and it's not that we want to be selfish. It's more that we're trying to preempt the what ifs, because that inner critic part, what we do know, it doesn't have a crystal ball, but it will try and be prophetic and say, look, this is going to happen if you do this, or that's going to happen, or this is what happened last time. And in the end, we get so scared about ourselves that people just think, oh, it's all too hard, I'll just have a drink. But my understanding of the inner critic, and all the years I've been working with it professionally as well as personally, is that it is the reptilian part of the brain. It's the part that, it's like when we did live in caves and there were bears around the corner, and it would say, look, this might happen, but the chances of it not happening are very, very high. And so I believe that what we need to do is start to change that in the language. So that, I mean, it sounds very basic, but it really does work. Is that write down what your inner critic is saying about you. Really study it. Is it true? Is it based on foundation? And then writing down the opposite. Well, if you weren't listening to this part, what would be the opposite voice? What would be that voice? Because that's the voice that decides to be sober. That's the voice that decides that you don't need to drink. That's the voice that has the courage and the tenacity to keep going. And I'm saying that this is real. This is a tangible and proven way, is that your inner language is key to living a healthier life. And we all have that inner critic, but managing it takes practice. So even just 5 minutes in the morning before you get out of bed, nip to the toilet, come back to bed if you've got 5 minutes, or before you go to sleep at night, just start to have a conversation with yourself that is positive about now and your future.
Yeah.
Because the more your brain listens to this conversation, the more it becomes familiar. And I use that word a lot. I mean, Janey, we've talked about when we've worked together about, when we are familiar with feeling good, then the brain gets comfortable. And about it being sober, your brain is familiar and comfortable with it now, but it just takes some practice.
Yeah. And when people, want to reduce their drinking, then how do you usually recommend, what's the process? Because everyone's going to put different sort of parameters in place. So do you have any kind of guidelines that you recommend for someone who is either wanting to reduce their drinking or wanting to give up, but they're going to start by reducing their drinking? I guess it's the same principle.
Yeah, I just, my first top tip would be, be careful of your audience. So, if you've got alcohol police in your life, people who are quite judgmental about your drinking, ironically, it can tend to make us do sneaky drinking and make us go a little bit underground with the drinking. So unless you feel that that person is going to be really supportive, I would keep your concerns about your drinking to yourself and just start to do it in your own space. And little things like, I call them white lies. Just like, I've got a really bad headache, I'm going to sit this one out. Because I know a lot of people have partners who are heavy drinkers and don't want their partner to reduce. Or it could be that the other thing, they do want them to quit. So if they see any moment of vulnerability about them worried, about feeling worried, then it can have a negative effect. And I mean that in a very genuine way. So I say, choose your audience, and then set some rules for yourself that what you're going to do is you're going to have a couple of alcohol-free days, more than you normally would. When you drink, that you have that water next to you, and you start to, drink that water more than the wine or the beer or whatever. Because a lot of people are actually dehydrated. We're big tea and coffee drinkers. I know the Brits are mad for it. And so what we know is that caffeine is a dehydrator.
Mm.
So sometimes when people have that first glass of beer or wine, their brain and body are demanding liquid to hydrate. So the first glass could be just to hydrate us. That's why some people drink quickly. It's not because, there is the medicinal quickness, emotional medicinal quickness, but there's also the fact, so to have a lovely big glass of water before that first alcoholic drink. And start to keep an emotional diary about how you feel when you're not drinking. What is your mind saying to you? What's going on in your head? Because that's part of the issue, is that your mind, it's just works on what's familiar, and you have to break that state. You have to do things differently. So starting to understand what you are about and what your fears are and your anxieties and your insecurities will really help you to know that you are amazing the way that you are. And the more that you diarize and dialogue with yourself, then the better.
Yeah. Tell us about the workshops that you offer then. And I mean, one thing that's interesting is I know that with your workshops, you don't sort of expect people to interact and talk about how much they're drinking, and because there is, for many people, there really is this element of secrecy, isn't there? There's this guilt around it. I know when I first, came to this kind of thinking, I felt incredibly guilty. I did not want to tell anybody, so, and I know you come across that a lot, don't you?
Yeah, it's a very private business. I mean, a lot of people who come to my seminars, they say, Georgia, my husband thinks I'm at a meditation group for the
Yeah.
day, or my wife thinks that I'm going to a conference for the day. And I had one woman on one of my London seminars, and she was completely anxious because she had a new boyfriend, and he was like really into her, and she really wanted this on her own. She didn't want anybody to know. And she said, "Where are you going today?" I'm going to a meditation group. "Oh, I'd love to come with you." And no, 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 no. So by the time she walked in the seminar, she's like, "I really feel like I need a drink," kind of thing. We were joking about it, but it's a private journey, and some people will choose to share it, some people won't. And I've got a seminar coming up on the 14th of September in London, in Hammersmith, and the seminar is really about coming for the day and actually being in your own space. You can have a chat to your neighbor if you want to, you don't need to, but the goal of the day is to understand the science of the mind, how a mind creates these drinking habits and how to change them. And then there's a lot of hypnosis, but the goal is to walk out at the end of the day drinking less. I mean, that's what it's about. So people don't need to tell anybody, because all they'll see is that you're just drinking less and that you feel better about yourself. I mean, that's really what it's about, is just understanding that this is something that is, because a lot of people, once you tell them, then in their mind, you may think, oh, they think I belong in AA. And I'm saying, look, you don't need to go to AA. You have an incredible mind. You may choose sobriety. I mean, if you want to do sober, that's great. But the actual seminar is about reducing.
Mm. And with the book, with the excuse me, the books that you've written, tell us about the approach there, because again, you have hypnosis audios that people can listen to as well as the books.
Yeah, I have a digital program called 7 Days to Drink Less, which is the seminar, but in 7 days, because obviously the day is from like 10 till 3:45, so you're getting a lot of work done. But the 7 Days to Drink Less is once the same. It's the same thing. It's talking about the inner critic, the science of the mind, how we create emotional habits and how to change them. Working on the inner dialogue, which is the psychology of self, which is the many different parts that can sabotage our best made plans to do lots of positive things in our lives. And so it's a journey. I mean, it's a stage thing. One day after the other, and there are hypnosis recordings with it that you can listen to, 25 minutes, which you can just pop on and chill out to and just really enjoy. So, it's really, some people say to me, Georgia, I don't have 7 days. They say, Georgia, I just want to do it in one day. So I say, well, it's up to you whether you want to, come on the seminar or you want to do it in the privacy of your own home. But, it's all the same theory, is that there's lots of neuroscience, there's lots of stuff about, that we know that you can, that lovely statement or I should say the negative set when you can't teach an old dog new tricks is completely unfounded. And what we know is that the brain is malleable, it's pliable, it's adaptable. And even though people may be worried about their drinking, that it's not a life sentence, that you can change it.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's really an important thing to say, because, everybody's got their own stuff going on. Everyone's got loads of anxiety. A lot of people drink because they're lonely or they're bored, or, I've got a lot of, people who are empty nesters, the kids have gone. And I mean, most of the drinking we're talking about happens in the home. It's not in the bars or, the restaurants. It's really the home drinking we're talking about.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, you mentioned that people come along and they don't want to share this with their partner. What I mean, do you have any other kind of tips or suggestions for people who are giving up? They've given up drinking, or they're reducing their drinking, they're mindful drinking, but they're still in those early stages where they don't necessarily have the support of their partner or even of their family. How do you stay strong within that? I mean, I know you have to do this for yourself, but it's difficult, isn't it, when you don't have a support from someone close to you?
Is that, if you are feeling that you're on your own a little bit, and it's very common, the most important thing is to keep yourself protected. The most important thing is to keep yourself honorable to your goals, because the more your mind gets familiar with it, the more, and I would say just even 5 minutes in the morning, just rehearse getting through your day. And I know it sounds a very simple technique, but it really is powerful. With your mind, just imagining feeling, and the feelings are more important. Just feeling safe going through your day, having to deal with difficult people or situations. The more because the imagination that you have, and everybody has an imagination. It doesn't have to be words. It's the feelings that are really important. Starting to feel safe around, judgmental and critical people. Um, Being able to understand that, you can't change other people, and starting to honor that this is something you really want to do for you. So it's your business, keep it to yourself. Once again, diary is really important, but start to have post-it notes or set your alarm on your phone. I was talking to a client the other day, and we had this deal, that she would write, have an alarm on her phone, and that 3 times a day she would have a positive statement that it's safe to drink less. I am protected from, because she had a lot of critical people in her life, and one of her biggest critics was her child. I mean, a lot of people decide to come on the seminar or buy the program because a child has become critical of their drinking,
Mm.
because a lot of children, they want their mum and dad to be perfect. They don't want to see their parents flawed. And I think sometimes, I've heard many times people say to me, Georgia, I've got one bottle going in the fridge and I've got another stash in the garage, and I'm
Yeah,
kind of monitoring it. And
yeah,
this is when people start to really worry about their drinking. So, keep some reminders, post-it notes, um, just little moments where you can just start to feel better about yourself and to build your confidence up, so that you don't have to, not gagging for that drink. And
yeah,
a lot of the program is about pausing, thinking, getting your mind into a better space before you drink.
yeah,
And that takes practice. All of this, as you know, Janey, takes practice. Whether you decide to just not drink again, or if you decide you want to drink in a different way, everything takes practice. But obviously with the program, the practice is easy because it's all done hypnotically.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Um, just tell us a bit more about the scene in Australia then. We mentioned that in the UK, the mindful drinking movement, if you like, is quite big now. And we do have a few dry bars, a few in London
Yeah.
and a few popping up around the UK, which is absolutely amazing. There's a massive choice of alcohol-free and low alcohol drinks now. I mean, it's off the scale. What's it like where you are?
It's the same. I mean, the Aussies, are predominantly, culturally very British. And I think, we're very mindful. I mean, here in Australia, I mean, often I get asked to be on like breakfast TV when we have, because the different seasons of the year, dry January doesn't work because it's the middle of our
Yeah,
summertime.
of course. Yeah.
We've got sober October and dry July. It's very big here. We have a great guy here who's running a program called Hello Sunday. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
He's got a massive following here. And these are kind of the real rugged surf dudes who, go down to Bondi Beach and are out there. And I think this is a really important movement that we have to acknowledge, is that we abuse alcohol. We Aussies are, and I should be a little bit careful here saying this, but Australians are huge drinkers. We have wine on our doorstep. Every state in Australia has wine growing, pretty much probably, maybe, 10 miles away, there's a winery somewhere. And we're a lot of local produce that is brilliant. It's very quaffable. And I think that Australians hide behind the drinking. I mean, when I run a seminar, which I think is really interesting, when I run a seminar in London, there's predominantly more women than men. But when I run a seminar in Sydney or Melbourne, which I do every quarter here, there are more men than women. And I'm listening to men and I'm hearing some amazing stories. And the funny thing about men versus women is that they like to talk. So I've got, at the moment, 3 guys who are just desperate to be interviewed on the TV or on radio,
Really?
but nobody wants to hear the bloke's voice. And it's driving me mad.
Wow.
I'm like, come on. And they're like, one guy, he owns 3 bars in Melbourne, very successful entrepreneur. His partner was ready to leave him. And she's like saying, oh my, Georgia, this has just changed our family life. And he's like, just get me on breakfast TV, Georgia. But they just don't want it. And it really offends me, because why is it that we're focusing? I mean, you probably get it too, but they don't, the men are not being met here, and they're struggling just as much as the women,
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point, because I think there's, as you say, there's an awful lot of men who need to hear those voices, don't they? It's really true. I have lots of guests on the podcast, lots of male guests on the podcast. It's great. It's been brilliant to talk to you, Georgia. The work you're doing is fantastic. Just remind us again about that seminar and where we can get tickets for that, and also your book and your program.
Sure. The website, georgiafoster.com. So you can go there. The London seminar is there. Just book on. It's the 14th, and it's at the Novotel in Hammersmith. Obviously, I can only cater a certain amount of people. But if you want to book, please just go straight to, obviously, email if you've got any questions. But it's all pretty much self-explanatory. The digital program is there as well. And obviously, if you want to buy the book, which is Drink Less in 7 Days, you can buy it through Amazon or direct from my website, whichever you prefer. So there's 3 sources there, whichever suits. But I'd love to meet you in London if you've got the time to come in person and experience it all in one day, which is fantastic. And as I said, any questions, I'm here.
Brilliant. Georgia, thank you. I really appreciate it. We'll meet up when you're in London.
That'd be one. Can I go to one of those sober bars and have a
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's meet. We'll go to Redemption Bar. We'll meet there.
I'd love to.
That's a deal. All right.
Janey.
See you then.
Bye.
So thank you, Georgia. Really appreciate finding the time to talk to me from Australia to work out the time zones. A reminder then of our event on Saturday, September 7th at the Jago. Go to Eventbrite, Self-Care for the Sober Curious. It's the Saturday afternoon social with Sober Dave. And if you go to Instagram, it's Sober Dave 1. My Instagram is at Janey Lee Grace. I hope you'll give us any feedback, from the podcast. I had another couple of emails this week. It was so lovely to get emails from people who say, "Oh wow, it's really changed how I feel about certain things," and you can't wish for anything more than that, really. Just that people kind of just start to think a little bit differently. It's great. I mentioned my pop-up shop, 9th to the 15th of September in London as well, and of course the Sober Club. The waiting list is open. It's thesoberclub.com, and the doors will open, as it were, online on the 7th of September, and I'll I don't know, do a little live stream from Dave's event to say hi, the doors are open. And so if you're interested in getting in at the beginning, this will be the only time that we offer this discounted rate right at the very beginning, so that you can kind of help us shape it and get it right. If there's anything you're going to want to find out about in there, then let us know. The whole aim of the Sober Club is for people who are they know they want to give up drinking. This is really for people who have already given up. Maybe you've been sober or drinking mindfully successfully for a few weeks, a few months, even a few years, or you've made your decision, you've made your commitment, and now you're at the beginning and you really want to go for this. And so your thoughts are already into what next? Okay, what else is there for me? There will be a course in there, a 90-day course, and the beginning of that course will be guiding you through those early weeks. So if you are at that stage, there'll definitely be some great content there for you, and there'll be regular experts coming in. I've already mentioned that William Porter, author of Alcohol Explained, has already recorded some fantastic stuff for us around understanding the brain and understanding cravings. We've got lots of great stuff around nutrition, optimum health and well-being. We're going to look at treatments, therapies, mindset, and as I've already mentioned, relationships, of course. So it really is about upscaling your life, up-leveling in every area. Because one thing that I've really noticed over my kind of 18, 19 months of sobriety is how I've changed. I thought I was already pretty healthy. I've always been into health and well-being, but I'm now looking at a different level where I'm realizing, okay, this was the missing piece of the jigsaw. Slotting this sobriety bit in was the missing piece. And it's only now that I feel able to actually properly look at the other stuff. And I think that's the case for so many people. They sort out the drink issue, or they're on their way to sorting out the drink issue, and then they can start to think about exercise and movement and mindset and meditation and mindfulness and eating the right food and getting the right vitamins and minerals, the whole brain chemistry part of the picture, as well as finding their purpose. The amount of people who find that once they've ditched the booze, perhaps relationships change, and then there's a career change, or they start a business, or they form a charity, or they travel the world, or they write a book. It just goes on and on. It's absolutely amazing, and I just really want to try and bring together some of that optimum health and well-being mindset, holistic living picture, but all underpinned by that kind of layer of deciding to ditch the booze, or having already ditched the booze, if that makes sense. There's one other thing that I forgot to tell you, and that is that my TED Talk, which feels like I've been talking about it for ages, but I'm told that it goes live next week on YouTube and on TED.com. The title of the talk is Sobriety Rocks, Who Knew? And obviously, when it goes live on YouTube, I would so appreciate it if you would watch it and give it a like and a comment and all of that stuff, because obviously these things only get traction if the numbers rack up. It's a numbers game, isn't it? So I would obviously appreciate that so much if when that TED Talk is released on YouTube. Obviously, I'll put it on Instagram and I'll my social media or whatever. And if you would be good enough to give it a like, if you can give it a comment, even better, and share it. Just let other people see it. It's very accessible. Though I say so myself, it's there's nothing deep about my TED Talk. It's really very, very mainstream, very accessible. It's short. It's really quite punchy, and but I really hope it kind of makes an impact. That's kind of the aim with that TED Talk. So when that goes live, please do that. I'd really appreciate it. Self-care tip this week is just take some time for yourself. I'm so pointing a finger back at myself as I say this. I'm so mad busy, absolutely mad busy. And, sometimes you just have to pause. If you've got a smartphone, put a timer on your smartphone and at least every hour, or every couple of hours, if you really are, massively busy, just let that ring. And if all you do is, stand up, shake about a bit, kind of move your body a little bit, and just breathe for 2 minutes, just that. It seems like a tiny thing, but, it's enough just to kind of re-center you. So there's your self-care tip for this week. Now, next week, the podcast may be a bit delayed. It's just a heads up. So if it doesn't come through on the Friday, I haven't deserted you. It'll just be a day or so late. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast with Janey Lee Grace. Please subscribe to us on iTunes, rate us, share on social media, and tune in again.